Measuring devices. At some point, one of you has needed to make a measurement of something, be it metal, wood, fabric, paper, or whatever. As you can see here, I have a wide selection of measuring devices. Some are better suited for certain types of measurements. Most of us are familiar with the standard tape measure. So with that in mind, I bring you a video some of you would consider mundane of a tape measure sent to me by the people at Lexivon Tool Company. I know, I can already hear the sighs and grumbles coming from the audience at your shock and dismay at such a simple tool. But I actually asked if they would send this tool to me for review. I have never owned a tape measure with a laser measuring device. In fact, I don't think I've ever owned a laser measuring device at all. When I saw Lexivon had a tape measure with a laser in it, I knew I had to test it. I was really curious as to how well it worked. Some of the reviews I read claimed it didn't work or it was inaccurate, but I know from experience that they have the potential to be extremely accurate. I mean, scientists use lasers all the time for measuring, and since everything I have looked at from the Lexivon Tool Company seems to be fairly well crafted, I thought I would ask to see if I could test this out. Is this going to be the one tool that Lexivon flubbed at, or is this another good tool from them? Well, let's see if we can put these rumors to rest and satisfy my curiosity, or do the reviews actually have any merit? Maybe we can clear up any misunderstandings along the way as well. Hello everybody, Candor here, bringing you a tool review. And while this is a tool review, there isn't anything fancy or overly special about today's video. So let me go over some of the features and let's see if it measures up to its expectations. The unit comes in a nice little box. And inside, the first thing that we find is the user's manual. Now, Lexivon seems to have a trend going with its user manuals in that they are very well illustrated, small, easy to read without glasses, for me anyways, and have good explanations on how to use the tool and contain a good amount of useful information. They have to be some of the nicest manuals I've come across, and I commend them on such a nice job. Next is the card explaining that you have a 2-year warranty, as does every other Lexivon tool. The tool itself is a 16-foot or 5-meter tape measure in Lexivon's familiar black and yellow color scheme and has a slightly rubberized black outer edge. Now this is a 2-in-1 tape measure that is both a tape measure and a digital laser measuring device. It's about the same size as a Stanley 25-foot Fat Max, but at about half the weight. Given that this has to contain 2 AAA batteries, a laser diode, and various electronics, and a good-sized backlit LCD panel, it's not any bigger than many other tape measures. The blade is narrow and painted white with black numbers and has a nylon coating for protection. Now, what's really nice is the fact is that it's printed with imperial fractional markings. And while the tape does have markings in 1/16 of an inch, it only shows fractions every 1/8 of an inch. Now on the underside of the blade, you have a yellow and black marked ruler with both imperial and metric. But there are no fractional numbers on the underside. Now the blade auto locks, as you can see, and stays extended for hands-free use and will not retract until you press the red button on the front. The hook is magnetic for keeping it firmly attached to magnetic metal surfaces. The side clip is strong. I mean strong. and this will hold firmly to your belt with no issues. In fact, I see it being a harder, or I see this being a bigger problem of getting it attached to your belt than it is actually getting it off. But its biggest claim to fame is the laser. Now, this claims that you can measure distances up to 130 feet or 40 meters. I have my doubts on this unless absolute perfect conditions apply. Oh, and it comes with its own little Phillips screwdriver. Nice. Now, the laser is advertised as having an accuracy of plus or minus 1/16 of an inch, and it will turn the laser off in about 30 seconds and completely shut down in 3 minutes of non-use. The blade can be extended about 5 feet or so before it starts to buckle and collapse. Now, as I stated earlier, I actually requested this one for review. Now, I don't know if people are just confused as to how to work it properly, or is the unit really calibrated wrong? First and foremost is the fact that the laser measures to the back of the unit. In other words, when you see a number on the blade, the laser should report a distance of 3 3/8 inches longer. Now, if you can see it here, but right down here, it actually says 3 3/8 inches, or 86 millimeters. A very quick and brief introduction to laser measuring. This works by sending a beam of light to an object and then computing the time it takes for the reflected light to bounce back to be read by the collector. In other words, this is literally calculating the speed of light. Now, lasers can be affected by a few things. Different surfaces, paints, smoke, fog, dust, and other factors can interfere with accurate readings. Now, having worked with and played with lasers in my lifetime, I understand this. A deeply black painted surface won't reflect as much light as a white surface, making the laser function possibly inaccurate or even fail at longer distances, but may be better at shorter distances. There just may not be enough reflected light to get an accurate reading at longer ranges. If you've ever seen a video of someone trying to burn balloons with a handheld laser, then I'm sure you realize that the black ones burst much faster since they absorb more light. On the other hand, a brightly colored or very shiny white object at close range may overload the sensors, giving an inaccurate reading. Getting an inaccurate reading may not be the fault of the tape measure, but a physical limitation of lasers in general. This is not exactly a lab-grade, finely calibrated tool costing thousands of dollars. Now, I took a few measurements at close range, 1 foot to be precise. I used 3 objects of different colors, 1 black, 1 gray, and 1 white. The black and the gray pieces all measured within 1/16 of an inch accuracy, just what was claimed by the company. The white piece, however, measured in at 1/2 inch accuracy. The material and the color, especially at close range, can alter the results. Next, I took a measurement at 14 feet. This is close to the limit for the physical tape. I figured that if the calibration was off, then at this distance, there should be enough of a difference to see if this is accurate or not. Surprisingly, it was quite accurate. In fact, since what I was measuring was baseboard molding with hills and valleys, the laser may have very well been accurate given that the laser was shining on the wall. In any case, I feel it would have been good enough reading for me to risk making a cut at the displayed readout. I'm using it on a carpet shooting across the hall 14 feet away. The LCD readout says 14 feet, 4 5/16 inches. Remember, it measures to the back of the body, which adds another 3 3/8 inch. So that original 14 feet is now 14 feet, 3 3/8 inches. When we subtract these two numbers, we're only off by a difference of 15/16 of an inch. But when you look at the molding, you find that the profile is thicker at the bottom than at the top, meaning the physical wall is further back than the molding. Setting my calipers to 15/16 of an inch and measuring how fast or how far past the edge of the molding they extend, I get a difference of about 1/4 inch. At this level of accuracy, one has to ask, which is the more accurate? Is the tape more accurate than the laser? It boasts a plus or minus 1/16 inch accuracy, but over what length can you expect to see that much of a deviation? If we assume it's over the length of 1 foot, then at 14 feet it's possible or feasible to see a difference of plus or minus 14/16 of an inch. I measured only 1/4 inch difference, which would be better than advertised. Again, I would have felt comfortable cutting a piece to the indicated size on the LCD panel. I also tried again at 22 feet and got the same 1/4 inch deviation. You can even measure small distances. I measured from 2 inches away and got an exact reading of 5 3/8 inches. Remember, it reads to the back of the tool. Now let's talk about some of the things that me personally, think could have been improved. First off, it would have been nice to have a way to switch between, or at the very least, have two readouts indicating measurements to the front and the back of the unit. It would serve to be less confusing and eliminating having to do complicated fractional math to remove the 3 3/8 inches each time. Secondly, having a wider blade would have allowed having printed both metric and imperial along with fractional markings similar to my fast cap. Now my fast cap is actually a specialized tape measure, but as you can see, not only does this contain imperial and metric on the blade on the front, but it also has markings at 1/16 inch as well. Now, while I'm a huge fan of having fractional marks on a tape measure, I'm also a huge fan of the metric system. It's far easier for math functions and more accurate measurements as well. And having to turn this over upside down to use the metric scale, I find cumbersome and awkward. But huge congrats for including that feature. But hey, if this is the worst that I can gripe about, then it's all good. The tool has some nice features. Now, some of my favorite features are the ability to keep the blade extended until you press the button, making one-handed operations a breeze. The numbers are fairly easy to read, and the included fractional markings make it less likely to make a mistake in measuring. The LCD panel is backlit, and it isn't cluttered, making it very easy to read indoors or out. Now, it can be switched between imperial and metric by briefly pressing the power button. And while the metric marks are on the bottom, I do like the fact that it has them. Next to my fast cap, this is really the only other measuring tape I have with metric readings, and it will most likely become my second favorite tape measure. I already know it's going to be used quite often. And while this may not appeal to most people, like my wife, I like the slightly chunky, oversized body. It fits my hand much nicer. Overall, I have to admit this is a nice tape measure. It feels good in the hand, and while it may have that all too familiar, cheap, plastic look and feel that everything else today has, it seems like it could take a good beating in the real world, as do most of my other tape measures. I get the feeling that this LCD panel is probably the most delicate part of the entire tool. I can see myself using this on a daily basis, especially for the auto-locking blade feature. It's minimalistic with only 2 buttons. It's easy to read. Even for a narrow blade, the markings stand out well enough to be seen. It isn't very heavy either for its size. This is going to go on my workbench in the garage to be my go-to for daily measuring. It may not be as feature-packed as my fast cap, but it isn't a specialized tape measure like my fast cap. I wouldn't hesitate to buy one of these again if I needed it. Yet again, I think it's another fine tool from the Lexivon Tool Company. And again, folks, I'd like to thank you for tuning in and watching my video. And if you like what you see, please don't forget to subscribe and press that bell icon to be notified of my next videos. And until next time, stay safe, and I hope to see you all again.